Hi, well, welcome to the end of this 4 weeks to Photoshoot series of videos that I've been doing. Yesterday I had my photo shoot. It was actually quite fun. So now I'm pretty much finished with this particular phase. So what I thought I'd do is do a roundup of where we've got to. So one final roundup of everything that we've covered over the last 4 weeks. And when I wrote this, I was quite stunned really with how much we've got through. When I started doing this, I thought that I'd just show you a couple of the things that I do in my lifestyle to give you some ideas of how you can start moving your life in a healthier direction as well. But then I got really sort of involved in it and really interested in it myself. I've actually given you an awful lot of information and tips and tricks, some exercises that you can do on how you can start moving your life in a direction that's more healthy. If you implement some of the stuff that I've talked through and shown you all about, then you will lose weight. I pretty much guarantee it. But let's get started and just recap what we've been through. So first of all, I did an introduction, who I am, what the champion lifestyle is, and why I was doing the video series, which was to, of course, get myself in a little bit better shape for a photo shoot to a point where I was happy with my body in that post-competition period, because I was still just a little bit in the post-competition period, so I still wasn't quite comfortable with myself. So the concept of doing a photo shoot was still freaking me out a little bit. And I think you've seen over the past 4 weeks how I've become much more just comfortable and accepting with where I'm at. Okay? And then we also covered what you'll learn. And then so what you did learn is why dieting's bad for you. We went through metabolism, what metabolic adaptation is when you diet, how long it takes, how long it lasts, and then I gave you a really real life example of why dieting is bad for you, really. We went through where my metabolism is at after 45 weeks of competing. Then we went through a kitchen makeover and setting yourself up for success. I showed you about detoxing your kitchen and your fridge and your freezer. And then we went out shopping. So we went to the supermarkets, we went to the markets with our trusty list. Remember, we did our planning. I wrote down what I needed to replace from the kitchen makeover. We went through a list of the staple items that you should have in your kitchen that's on hand at all times. And then we went shopping. The next thing, and this was a really important one, this was how you could lose weight by not counting calories. Okay? So I went through why calorie counting is pointless in the first place, because it's so inaccurately recorded on labels, your Fitbits, your exercise machines. They're all hopelessly inaccurate. And we saw that on a daily basis, your calories can vary between sort of anything between about 90 to over 500 calories difference, just with inaccurate labeling and inaccurate machines in the gym. So then we came up with ways of how you could eat the right amount for your body without measuring, counting, or weighing things. And that was all based on your hand. And the reason for that is, of course, you always have your hand with you. And once you start relating things in terms to your hand, you always know you're going to be eating the right amount of food, because your hand is proportional to what you need. Okay? Bigger people have bigger hands. They need more food. Smaller people have smaller hands. They need less food. So using your hand is a great way of doing it. And one thing that's actually not on the hand size portion guide is for long foods, I always use a forefinger. Again, it's proportional in the size of your hand. So long foods that don't naturally fit into a sort of a chunk or a round sort of shape, I always use a forefinger. So there's another one as well. And then we established your baseline. Now, and that was pretty much the end of the first week. So we talked about tracking progress. I did a roundup. I talked to you about where I felt, how I was rebalancing, how my body was feeling. We started talking about consistency, which is critical. And I know I've talked about this a lot all the way through. And I showed you how to set up a consistency journal and what to aim for. And then I gave you some more reasons why diets fail. And we started getting into goals and goal setting and how you can make goals manageable for you. And also we talked about why sometimes picking an arbitrary number to aim for when you're on a weight loss program is not necessarily the most ideal thing to do, because you might not know what you look like when you've reached whatever that number is. Okay, so we talked about other ways of gauging progress. And then I talked about accountability, and I showed an example of that study where the people who not only held themselves accountable but checked in as well got better results than those who just thought about it in their heads. And then we put it into practice. I actually showed you a full day's meals with some meals that either fitted the hand size portion guide or the PN plate layout. And I also showed you how to make the ideal smoothie as well that fitted the hand size portion guide. Okay, then we got into goals. So we talked about what goals were, how to set them, why they fail. We talked about motivation, and again we went into chunking down as well. And at the end of that, I gave you a fully implementable 28-week program with step-by-step goals. And if you implement every single one of those habits on a 2-week basis, then you will achieve your results. And then we got into establishing a healthy habits and routines. And I gave you 2 of mine, which were the morning digestive kickstart drink and meditating. Then we talked about what is health. I gave you some very dry definitions and then talked you through and showed you what the problem is with modern diets and lifestyles, which is basically a combination of overly processed, highly palatable foods, lack of activity. And then we talked about the Hunger Games, and this one is one of the very key lessons I learned when I lost all my weight. It was learning exactly what my body was telling me when I was hungry and how many meals a day that I was the right number for me. And this is what I've stuck to ever since I learned it. Okay, I gave you a couple of sneaky tips to increase your water intake, gave you another healthy habit to establish, and then we busted a couple of myths. You know, how you don't have to drink your 8 glasses of water a day, and there is no right or wrong number of meals for you to eat a day. It's just what right or wrong for you. And that was the end of week 2. So again, we covered an awful lot in that week. So then I gave you another roundup. I showed you my DEXA scan. I showed you how to track progress through photographs. And again, we talked about the consistency journal. And then, and this was probably very important to you, I actually did a full food prep session. Remember when we were talking about sort of being healthy? One of the biggest hurdles people often have to deal with is that they think that healthy eating takes forever. And I showed you that it doesn't, where I made 32 meals in 48 minutes. And the meals were actually meals I'd never made before as well. Apart from 2 of them, I hadn't made those meals before. So I was also reading from the recipe in that same 48 minutes, and they were all really healthy foods. And I gave you a couple of tips on how to speed things up as well. Then we got into emotional eating, what it was, and how to identify whether you were eating emotionally and what you can do about it. And then I actually gave you an example of where I was about to eat emotionally, but I stopped myself and I did something else instead. And that's the key to it. When you find yourself eating emotionally, when you get to the fridge, you might have had a long, stressful day. I don't know, you've been met up with somebody who's stressed you out, and you just go and reach for whatever's in the fridge. When you find yourself doing that, you stop and think about whether you're hungry. This ties into the hunger rate. You find out if you're hungry, and if you're not, what can you do instead? Okay, and you also identify the emotion behind the action and identify ways that you can deal with it. Okay, so this was a very critical one. And again, I gave you a journal and a way of working out for you whether this is something that you're doing. And then I talked about managing events. Okay, life throws curveballs at us at all times. You know, just because we're on a healthy eating program or we're trying to lose weight doesn't mean life stops. Okay, so I gave you a way of dealing with it, and I showed you what I did to deal with it, so that if you know that something's coming up and it's going to derail you or potentially derail you, and you might feel bad about it, then I gave you a way of managing that expectation. And then we talked about eating mindfully, and this works really nicely with the emotional eating side of things as well. When you eat mindfully, you will lose weight. It improves your digestion, and you'll just feel better generally. You'll feel more in control, and you'll just feel less stressed around food generally. I talked about why chewing calories is better than drinking your calories, and this is why, although I do love smoothies, I tend not to include them very often in my lifestyle because of the fact that you can really actually overindulge in calories with a smoothie because you're not doing the chewing. Then I gave you a way of teaching your kids how to be healthy and how you can also apply it to yourself, and that is eating the rainbow. If you make your food bright and pretty and interesting and good to look at, you're more inclined to want to eat in that style. I also gave you a tip on how to make time for eating meals, all right? And then another method of being able to determine whether you are eating mindfully or not. Then we went into whether healthy eating was expensive. This is overriding perception, and I think I showed you that pretty much every means by which we get information tells us that healthy food is expensive. Even supermarkets tell us that healthy food is expensive, subconsciously by their pricing. And it doesn't have to be so. It's because the wrong things are being compared. When you compare a more useful indicator like the nutrition density index, or particularly this one here, the dollar per nutrient, I showed you that healthy eating is absolutely not expensive and is absolutely much more cheaper than eating junk foods and convenience foods. And also we talked about the health halo. And then we did a very quick roundup for week 18, and again talked about consistency. And you could see how I've progressed, increased my consistency, and the results I was getting with the photographs as well. And then I did yet another epic food prep, and I challenged myself to beat the more meals with the less money. And and this was awesome again because I haven't, with the exception of the kitchery, I hadn't made any of these again, so I managed to make more meals in less time, still using recipes that I wasn't familiar with. And then we got into how you customize your hand-sized portion guides to meet your goal, and we, based on body type, activity level, and your weight goals. And then I gave you an example of how I modify it to myself, depending on whether I'm in competition mode or not. And then we had to talk about exercise. You just have, I've said this before, no healthy lifestyle can not include exercise. Okay, so I gave you some very, very easy ways of getting into exercise. I also covered the most common excuses for not exercising, and if you recognize any of those yourself, next time you recognize yourself doing that excuse, stop yourself and tell yourself to not buy into your own bullshit. Okay, I gave you some tips on how to get started, and then I gave you some sort of top fitness trends as well. And then we got into how you track progress and why the scales lie. Yes, they're a useful part of gauging overall progress, but I see so many people get so hung up on the number on the scales, and then they get all upset because it's not going in the direction they want it to, because it's going all over the place. And I gave you a very good example of this through my own prep, and I show you how weight loss is never ever linear. And I gave you an example of how particularly females suffer from these phases called stalls and whooshes. And then I gave you the best way of measuring progress, which was photographs, and I showed you my entire progress throughout my prep. So there we are. That brings us to week 4 roundup and the overall summary. So we've covered an awful lot in this 4 weeks. And if you implement this stuff, you'll know how to find your unique body blueprint. You'll know how to identify whether you're eating emotionally. You'll know how to eat mindfully. You'll know how much to eat, what to eat. You'll know how to prepare your food and how it's quick and easy. You know how to track progress. You know how to stay on track through your consistency journal. You know how to set goals, identify your motivation, and make those goals manageable and realistic. And we got this. And then I did the fully implementable 28-week plan. So what's next? If you've started doing this and you're enjoying how easy it is and how it takes the stress away from you around food, and it just makes things a lot easier and simpler, if it takes away the confusion and the confliction, then you can work with me in my Champion Lifestyle Coaching Program. Now, this program is a 12-month program, and it's behavioural based and outcome driven. Everything that I've been teaching you up to now has been based on behaviours and how you can achieve outcomes in the most simple and effective way. And what happens when you join onto the program is that I sign you up to my Pro Coach coaching program, which is an automated process. You'll get an email inviting you to join the program. You set up your profile and you fill in a quick questionnaire, and the program is then customized based on your questionnaire. And what you will get is you'll get a new habit or practice every 2 weeks. So it might be the Hunger Games. You'll do that for 2 weeks. It might be the Emotional Eating Journal. You'll do that for 2 weeks. It might be eat protein at every meal, and you'll do that for 2 weeks. But you will get a new habit or practice every 2 weeks, and you'll get a daily email with lessons and assignments to support the current habit or practice. And this might be a video, it might be an article to read, but it will help give you background into what the practice is and help keep you on track with the practice. You'll get a weekly review, get a roundup, just like I've done the roundup. This is the accountability part of it. Remember, the accountability was critical, and the people who held themselves accountable got the best results. So there's a weekly review to help you stay on track, and you'll weigh yourself, you'll upload that into your profile on ProCoach, you'll upload photographs, and any emails and questions you've got, you go into ProCoach and you ask those emails or questions, and I will give you an answer to those questions. There's monthly workshops that help you set expectations and regular progress checks, and your questionnaire will help customize your nutrition plan based on your goals and activity levels. And then if you're new with exercising, you can opt in and get workout ideas and programs based on your ability and your availability. Okay, and the key to this program is the pace is set by you. You progress as fast as you feel comfortable, and if you want to take the pace down, you can. If you want to take the pace up, you can. And you'll be working with me throughout the whole program for 12 months to reach your health goal. Now, the cost of this program is just $100 a month. And if you're interested in joining, drop me a line through the Facebook page, drop me a message. We'll have an initial phone call to discuss what your goals are, and then we'll get you started. So if you've enjoyed this last 4 weeks and this full series and you found it very helpful, I highly, highly recommend that you join me on the Champion Lifestyle Coaching Program to accelerate and take your health in new directions so you can become the best version of you too.